Hey, what's going on, guys? So just this past week, we kicked off our new contest, which is UC versus AU. Hopefully you guys checked that out. You can check out the video if you missed that announcement, and hopefully you guys are planning to enter. Really looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. But for this weekend's Mook review then, I thought it would be appropriate to look at something that hopefully might be helpful to maybe some of you guys. It's another kind of tutorial-based book. This is part of the Gunpla Super Techniques series from Teppei Hayashi and Hobby Japan, and this one is the Easy Finishes for Weekend Modelers HG version. So we're gonna see a bunch of different nice, going from very beginner to a little bit more advanced, a bunch of different techniques and tutorials in here for doing different modifications and improvements to your HG Gunpla in particular, but of course, obviously a lot of this stuff in here is applicable to any model kits, not only HG Gunpla, but let's go ahead and get into it here for today's video. All right, starting off with the cover here. Here we can see the HG unicorn on the front. On inside of the dust jacket, we just have basically the same thing in monochrome minus the model kit. The model kit's interestingly painted up in a sort of the style of making it look like it's a kind of a cartoon, or like an animated kind of 3D render or something like that kind of. So I'm sure you guys have seen that style around. On the back side, you can see some thumbnails of some of the other builds that we're gonna see inside here. And MSRP for this one at 1,500 yen, so less than $15. Very nice. On the back inside of the jacket, the Gunpla Super Technique, that is the book which we have taken a look at before. That one, and I think that's the version which mostly covers MGs in that. I think it's not specifically for MG, but it mostly works on MGs, so that's why this one is specifically for HG. Onto our inside table of contents here, you can see we are going to have some non-Gunpla in here, I guess, sort of, in having this HG mobile doll Mei is going to be covered in here as well. It's mostly going to be all Gunpla, like mecha stuff, but there you got your list over on the side. And then, as so many of these Mooks start off, at least ones that cover like beginner basic techniques, we've got an introduction to just kind of some basic tools here, nippers, knife, glue, paintbrushes, paint markers, spray can paint, and we will get into some more. I believe it will get eventually to like airbrush painting and everything. So it's gonna start off with the really basic stuff. This is all kind of stuff that we've seen before, and I think a lot of what's covered, at least for this first build here, is covered in the build in like the book that is strictly for the entry grade RX-782 kit. And anyway, I think we've seen this all like in previous books before, but just kind of how to get rid of the safety flags on the V-fin, cut those off with your nippers, trim it down with your knife, and then sand it with some sandpaper. Actually, there's not sanding covered here, at least in the photograph, but I would then also recommend sanding it here for the little V on the crotch. This is kind of an interesting one, and this is one of the reasons why I've talked about before using the stickers, not just throwing the stickers in the trash immediately. Sometimes you'll see like some of my more experienced builder friends and different people online that will say just, you know, toss the stickers in the trash. This is one reason why the stickers can be useful. He's basically using that V sticker for the front of the crotch there as a mask, cutting out the yellow V in the center of the sticker, using the red part of the sticker to put over that, and then you can paint it with your Gundam marker. In this case, he's letting the paint out of the Gundam marker into a tray. Then with a brush, paint some white on there first, just so you can get a nice, bright, pure yellow. And then get some yellow paint that over the white, and then you can just remove the sticker and you've got your V. Now his didn't come out that particularly great, could have been better, but still that is a good way to use your sticker as a mask. Moving on then, just kind of a little bit about the basics of panel lining with a panel line marker, real touch markers, and fine tip pens there for panel lining. All pretty straightforward. And then adding some weathering onto it with some, I believe that would be some Mr. Weathering color that is just kind of thinned down a little bit, and then just kind of painting on it. Also an important step is, of course, testing it. Test it to make sure that it's kind of the right consistency that you want to work with. Just test on like a piece of runner or something. So hang on to some bits of runner for just testing paints and things like that from time to time. So make sure you just have some of that on hand. Then painting it here onto the shield, cleaning it up a bit with the Q-tip or cotton swab, whatever. Important thing to keep in mind when you're doing that, to kind of wipe it in a downward motion, because if you're simulating weathering, weathering, the dirt and water and rain and whatever is going to be affected by gravity. It's going to be like running and streaking down. So when you're cleaning up your weathering fluid and pigments and stuff like that, clean it up in like the same downward motion so that you're kind of making your weathering look more natural. It looks like then he's just going over it with the hair dryer to just kind of cure it faster, I would guess is kind of the reason for that. Applying some more of that weathering here onto the shields, the weapons, the shoulder. And you can just kind of see some more of that. Kind of interesting technique here in order to make like the edges nice and bright after applying your kind of weathering onto there. It kind of dulls the edges a little bit, just kind of gives that appearance. So to kind of bring back, especially because this kit is not painted at all, to bring back that kind of nice shiny edge around there, he's just using a knife to just very lightly score the edge, and that'll give you this. It's basically just removing the plastic, which also is removing the plastic on the surface, which is stained by the weathering solution. And that'll give you just this nice bright edge along the edge of there, and that'll make it look a bit more defined. So that's a really cool technique. This is why I love books like this, even though it covers a lot of, very basic stuff. There's always something interesting, little tricks and things that you can learn for that. So that's something that I've certainly never seen. Applying the eye sticker here and then using a toothpick around the sticker to form it into place. That's something I've talked about many times. That's the technique that I always use for putting on stickers myself. Using a toothpick works very well. And then here is the finished results. So there you go. Just with a little bit of basic kind of weathering on there. I don't even think he did even any top coat on it, at least. Oh, there was a bit of top coat done over here, kind of before the weathering was applied. And at least I'm not sure, there may be mention in there about some further top coat added onto it, but here you can see the completely just snap built kit versus this one that has a little bit of weathering on it, just kind of like a general kind of filter over the entire kit for the most part. But all right, so next step, it means we're going to be stepping up in kind of difficulty, quote unquote, sort of stepping up the technique with each build and moving on to the prototype DOM, or the high grade DOM test type from the Origin HG line. But once again, after the kit is all painted, spraying it with some top coat, and I would assume that's either a matte or a semi-gloss here for the top coat, because you don't want to use gloss coat if you're planning on doing weathering like this over the top of it, just because your weathering solution on a gloss coat, when you go to kind of clean it up, it'll just completely wipe it away too quickly. You need a little bit of like that matte finish, so semi-gloss would probably work. Matte would work even better, just for having some texture for your weathering products that you're going to be applying on there to kind of grab onto and stay on there on the kit where you want them to stay, while still being able to kind of clean them up as you need. So applying some more of the weathering fluid on there, just to kind of give this a more kind of dirty look this time, to make it look kind of a bit sandy. So using like a light tan and white, kind of off-white gray colors here for the filtering kind of being applied onto this, and then going back over that with a darker color over that to kind of create some more interesting colors here going on with that. This is interesting because he's using these sticker markings, but then dipping them in some kind of, I'm guessing that that's not water because they're not water slides. At least as far as I can tell, it doesn't look like he's using the water slides for that. Those look like the sticker decals, and just looks like a sticker decal here. But I'm guessing that must be some sort of chemical there that will just kind of make the sticker a bit more malleable maybe, and a bit more kind of thin the sticker a bit, weaken it a bit, just to make it a bit more flat. I'm not sure what that is, and I can check the translation later, but it's interesting. Also kind of a challenge when using those sticker markings and doing weathering, as to whether you want to do your weathering or put on the sticker markings first. The problem is that realistically, the weathering would be over the top of the markings, as the markings would be put on there when the mobile suit is fresh and brand new, and then any weathering that's happening to the mobile suit while it's in use is happening over the top of the markings, right? That said, when you're doing your weathering in those sticker markings, because of the thickness of them, it's hard to do weathering over the top of those stickers, just because like the fluid and things that you're using for weathering is gonna get like stuck along the edge of that sticker, and it's just gonna look weird, and it's not gonna look good. If you've ever tried it, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And so it can be kind of difficult to do weathering if you're using those sticker decals. And as you can see here, like you can see some of that a little bit on some of these, that it's just going to make the stickers look really bad. So it looks like what he's done is kind of put the stickers on halfway through the weathering after doing like some of the weathering on it. Put the stickers on, and then going back and doing some more weathering kind of over the top of some of the stickers here and there, just to make them look a little bit more blended into the design. Some sponge chipping there. It looks like adding some pigments around onto some areas, just to give it a more kind of dirty, dusty, sandy kind of look. And it looks like using some kind of foil or something, for underneath that clear part to make it look nice and bright, using some paint markers for painting the mono eye to give it like a little dot of white on there to make it look like a sort of like a glowing reflection sort of there for the eye, rather than it just being plain clear pink or whatever, plain like metallic pink, whatever he's using there for the mono eye. So he's using Gundam markers to paint the mono eye a little bit there as well. And our finished result here looks very cool. So that is, we're kind of going a little bit slowly through this because there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to go through some of these other builds a bit more quickly and maybe not talk about every single point because there's a lot to talk about in these. That's why I love these books, especially this particular series of Mook is so good because there's a lot of really great stuff packed into here. And nice that it spans from like the more simple techniques for like just a snap build, unpainted, then painting, and just kind of working your way up and up and up in the techniques. So there's a bit of modification now going on to like here, for example, on the Zeta Plus C1, sharpening the chin piece a little bit there on that. Interesting here. Okay, so this is another thing that I've seen this done before, but I've never really tried it, and it's cool to see here because now it's making me kind of want to give it a try. But using some liquid mask around on some of like the panel lines, so it's sort of like doing panel lining with liquid mask first and around some of the edges. So you'll have it like a little bit messy around some of the edges, just this little thin layer of liquid mask. And then doing your filtering over the top of that. So you'll be kind of like changing the color tone of the plastic a bit with your filter. In this case, he's just got like a dark grayish black kind of filter just to make it look a bit more kind of like it's had smoke or whatever kind of going over it. Then when you remove the liquid mask, it'll reveal some kind of clean bits and it'll give the appearance of chipping, like a lighter color chipping along some of the edges there. It's a really cool technique. And like I said, I've seen it done before, but I've never given it a try, and it looks like it works quite well, especially for a model kit in particular like this one. And then some other effect over here is kind of like adding a drop of weathering color, and then looks like kind of cleaning it up so that it makes sort of like a circular kind of stain or something, I'm guessing. It almost looks like, I don't know, whether he's sort of trying to create like what looks to be like a bullet impact point sort of, or it's supposed to be just like there was water like dripping and it's just like a circular kind of stain there. I'm not really sure exactly what that's emulating, so again, I'll have to try to do some translating on that. Painting some of like the lights on the wings here, some weathering here around some of the vents, and again, just thinking about how the weathering is going to look directionally. So the staining here from the vents will go that way, you know, following how, you know, you can guess that the air is going to be coming out of there, air, smoke, whatever else. So just kind of thinking realistically about how the weathering is going to work on the mobile suit. So we have some more of that, including bringing out some of the details here on the bottom of the feet as well. And you can see kind of our finished product here. We'll see some more on the next page. So we have it in mobile suit form and in Wave Rider form here. Really, really cool looking. Again, not entirely sure about what was going on with those circle stains. I'll have to translate that to kind of see what he was going for. It's a cool look. It seems to be like kind of a bit all over the place. So that's why I'm a little bit unclear as to what exactly that's supposed to be. But here's something I kind of passed over first, but I want to go back and look at it because now I realize what was going on here with this. On the areas like that will be moving, like the wings here, it transforms between different modes there. The wing part is going to move in and out like that. So what he's done with this is just mask off this section right there, which is going to be the part where it's going to be moving. Applied some weathering color onto there, and then using a compass actually, which I think you probably don't really necessarily need to use a compass if you want to be very precise about it, but you could use a compass, and using a compass and a cotton swab to wipe the weathering color in like a circular motion so that when you get your finished result, it makes an effect like what you can see over here. Hopefully you guys can see that in where the wing is going to open and close, it looks like there's kind of like oil streaking along the way that would open and close here in the knee as well. So really cool way to show like how these parts would be weathered with just like with oil or whatever as it transforms back and forth between the different forms. A lot of that I'm sure is all taken like from aircraft modeling and then applied to a model like this. I mean, it certainly makes sense, but just kind of goes to show how you can learn a lot of really interesting techniques via different types of modeling and kind of apply it then to Gunpla in this case, or I mean, certainly the same could be said for other techniques in the opposite direction, vice versa, I suppose. But all right, up next we've got the HGUC XS Gundam, an older kit, so we're going to be covering seam line removal first, as there are a number of seam lines to remove on this kit, of course. If any of you guys are wondering about the long lost work in progress project that I had using the HGUC XS Gundam, that I do still have that, and I do still hope to get back to working on and finishing that project someday in the future. But yeah. If any of you guys don't know what I'm talking about, a long time ago, I wanted to basically take a frame arms frame, the architect frame, and put it into a Gundam kit to kind of give it better articulation and everything. And I figured out that a kit that would work well with that would be the HGUC XS. I just unfortunately have not actually done that project yet, but all right, so we're painting now, and we're painting on the runners. Again, this is something I'll talk about once again. I don't recommend it because this is exactly what you end up having to do. You paint on the runner, then when you cut the part off, you have to go back and touch up the paint again. So it's better to just don't even bother, just cut the parts off, clean them up first, and then paint, so you don't have to go back and touch things up. For masking, you can put your masking tape on there first. Go over it like with, again, this is a toothpick he's using for that, just like you would with a sticker. That'll give you a nice defined edge. You can see where the edge is. Then you can go over with a knife, cut it out, and then you've got your mask there. Very easy peasy, where you're masking around a particular detail like that. So he's masked off a couple of parts here for painting some blue sections on some white parts. Some more masking here, like on the V-fin, masking on the shoulder parts for making that splinter camo. Very much Sentinel style there on the XS Gundam. Hand painting the little yellow vents there on the side of the face. Hand painting in some more of the details here on the chest, on the yellow part. So just hand painting in with, looks like probably Tamiya enamels, and then cleaning it up with a cotton swab to get a nice clean effect. Stuff. If you guys have seen my work in progress videos, you know this is what I do all the time for painting small details. Most of the time, if it's a small little detail like that, I will not bother masking and spraying that with an airbrush or anything. I'll just hand paint that in, simple enough, and then painting in some more of these details around here on the kit. Then weathering time, which is certainly going to make this look so much nicer, especially here on the shoulder. Those two blues are very contrasting, so if you have colors right next to each other, either on the same part like that, or just on like right here, this whole chest part is a few different parts put together, but just to kind of help to really bring all the colors together in a nice cohesive way, applying a filter or some kind of weathering layer over the top of everything helps to kind of make everything look more uniform. So that's what he's doing here over the kit. So with a thin layer of that. And then our finished result here looks quite nice. Still, I think could have done with a bit more defined panel lining around some areas, especially like around on the face and some of these parts here. The filtering did kind of bring out some of the raised details here and there, but I think a little bit more panel lining I think probably would have looked nicer on this, but still the kit looks great. It's just a nice looking kit. A little bit limited, and the proportions I think are not quite right, but it's a cool looking kit, and now it's making me want to go back and work on that work in progress that I talked about. Okay, HG Banshee Norn is up next, and with this one, what are we going to be doing here? Looks like we're making it from the orange psycho frame to a green psycho frame. Now, I get asked this question a lot. Is it possible to change the color of clear parts? I shouldn't say a lot. Every so often I do get asked this question. Is there any way to make your clear orange psycho frame parts into clear purple or clear blue or clear green or anything like that? And in this case, it looks like he's used a fluorescent green spray paint. And I think that's probably a good way to go about it, just because it's not opaque. Fluorescent colors are typically not 100% opaque. They're typically a little bit transparent, and so you will still get a little bit of the glow of that transparent plastic, or the clear plastic, but you can obviously alter the color. Now, depending on how thick or how many layers of paint you go with that, you can adjust the color a little bit, or you can adjust it a lot to being completely opaque if you want to go that route, if you keep adding layers onto it. But that is certainly a good way to change the color of clear parts, and it will work to a degree. And obviously, if the ultimate effect that you're going for in the end is to use a black light to make the parts glowing, fluorescent paints work very, very well for that, of course. So I think with this, looking at it not under the UV light, you can still see that the green is not like pure green. You can sort of tell, and not necessarily that there's like orange going on under there, but you can tell that the green is like a little bit off green kind of color, and that's because it's somewhat translucent painted over clear orange. But once again, over here, using the stickers as a mask for painting some more of these parts on here. Then it looks like adding some water slide decals. So these are gold caution markings that he's adding onto here. Just some generic Hobby Japan gold caution markings. So it's kind of an introduction about how to do water slide decals. Pretty straightforward, but again, the finished result does look really nice, especially under black light. I think that looks very cool. So came out looking pretty awesome there. I love the Banshee Norn. Up next, the HG Gunpla Mark II Peru 2 custom here with that very ornamental detail added onto it. So because he's using the just original Gunpla HGUC kit, well, it's the Revive kit, he is just going to be painting everything in order to make it red. So he's using a kind of, looks like a metallic red. I think it's sort of like, anyway, a glossy metallic red color there for making the red armor. So once again, spray painting on the runners. We did that in the last build. I think in this build, could have not done that, but man, he just really loves pushing my buttons with that painting on the runners. But okay, anyway, after everything's all painted on the runner, cutting everything off, touching up the paint, especially touching up high gloss metallic paint like this, it's just not going to work well. I just would not recommend, just don't do that, please. Especially if it's like metallic colors, jeez. All right, then on the gold parts, it looks like using like an orange marker there. So another thing to keep in mind, you know, for your panel lining, you don't just always have to use just black for panel lining for everything. Think about what color the plastic is. You basically, what you want to do with your panel lining is make a darker shade, a shadow of whatever color it is. So if it's like a gold part, you can use an orange or brown. Sometimes a lot of times what I'll use on gold parts using brown panel liner. But like on yellow, red parts, orange parts, using brown works well. On blue parts, black works pretty well. On white parts, you would want to use like gray typically in order to not make it too contrasty. Anyway, using some of these parts, which looks like parts from like nail supplies for adding this kind of detail onto nails for nail art or whatever. This one maybe not, maybe something different. But anyway, you can use other products not specifically designed for Gunpla on Gunpla to a nice effect. Like for example here, nice is subjective. It's not really to my personal taste, but I mean, it works pretty well for this build and ends up looking, you know, very well done. It's not something that I would personally do, but you know, to each their own, and I get the effect. So I think it looks nice anyway. It's well done. Okay. Anyway, moving on to the HG Gym Custom over here. Now I'm looking at this first page here, trying to figure out what's going on. So now we're into like some actual modification to the kit, and where it's going to take a little bit more brain power for me to try to figure out what's going on here without going through and actually translating some of this. But he's doing some modification onto the arm here. My first thought was that he's modifying the arm in order to make this easier to remove the seam line on the arm. So like for example, because this elbow joint is set into the forearm, you have to cut this part out and cut this in a way that makes it so that you can take this forearm part in and out, or take the elbow joint in and out of the forearm, I should say. That seems to be like what's going on there. And then here, like in the shoulders as well, just modifying some of the shoulder joint. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to tell exactly what's going on. Some of these parts is easier than others. Like for example, the hip joints here, because it's just a simple ball and socket joint, that's always going to be very limiting to the hip articulation. It looks like what he's done is to actually just kind of cut or grind. I'm not sure if that's just cut with a knife or just like ground down with a kind of a Dremel tool, whatever you want to use for that. Just the top of the armor there, which normally would kind of just be getting in the way. If you wanted to do a more extreme kind of angle with that, just grind some of that down or cut that away a bit to give you a little bit more range of articulation here on like the bottom part of the leg armor as well, to make it so that the ankle can bend a little bit more inwards. You just cut the armor a little bit there, and you know, so long as it's going to be not affecting the overall look that much, you might as well. Like here in the legs, for example, you can see because he cut that part, that's actually at the back part of the top of the thigh, that makes it so that the legs can turn more outward, like you can see in this image here, and here you can see it from the front. The legs can turn more outward at the front, and you can get a more cool looking stance there that you couldn't do because of the shape of the armor there at the top had he not cut that away. Looks like over here is some custom scribing, it looks like, and I use that kind of in quotation marks because scribing, I should say. So it looks like he's just doing it with a knife, which is kind of like very rudimentary scribing. It's not really the best way, but it works, and some people do it really well. But so this is very interesting. Using the runner marking, you know, like on the runner where it has like the title of the kit, whatever, it's like a flat piece. You can see a lot of times people will use that for plot plate, essentially, because if you just kind of cut off the raised titling wording on there, you just basically have just a little strip of plot plate. It's usually about 1 millimeter thick, but you can make it thinner in this case by doing this with a flat iron, like a hair iron. Put that in there and heat that up and melt it. I'm not sure how that would not stick to there. I wonder if you have to use something in order to make like just wax paper or something maybe. I'm not sure for that not to stick, but somehow it's not, the plastic is not actually melting and sticking on there, but do it carefully. And then you can have a thinner piece of plot plate, I guess, just by flattening that out a bit. And you can use that for adding plot plate details on your kit, I guess. So, okay. Very interesting. And here's the finished result. It looks great. I mean, it's a great looking kit, just with some simple modifications to it. The Gym Custom's always looking cool. I don't know why I've never built one. I don't know. Couldn't say, but should build one at some point. And this looks really nice here, especially once again with like the brown used for the panel lining on it, rather than just straight black. It gives it a bit more color. Typically, it's just like a, you know, very much just a one color suit. So you kind of need a little bit more color added in there to make it kind of more visually interesting looking, and using that brown adds some nice effect to that. All right, next up, the Penelope here. Now this one looks like he is opting to not paint the white, but paint some of the details, add some of the decals just already on the runner. So he's doing some hand-painted decals on the runner, spraying top coat on the runner, and then adding more details on the runner before finally cutting the parts off. When is he ever going to actually cut the parts off? Let's see, we're painting, doing more gold painting, and then finally cutting the parts off the runner here before doing some more detail painting on there. So more detail painting and weathering on the inside of some of these parts. And then some chipping on some of the plastic and adding kind of a little bit of this sort of very, very thin metallic chipping kind of all over, emphasized on like some of the edges there a bit more, but you can kind of see it's kind of like all over the place just to give this more kind of wider, dirty look kind of to the armor as a whole. Adding some more weathering in and around on some of these inner edges. Don't forget about some of the inside parts. You know, just because it's not visible from the front doesn't mean that it won't be visible in different photos. So as you're looking around the kit and something, you'll see like you got weathering and it's like all dirty on the front, and then on the back side of this one part, here's this very clean, pure white little strip of the armor right there. Just something to look out for. I've seen it so many times, especially in different contest builds and things, where people do a really great job on the weathering on the outside, and then you see like the inside edge of a part where like they completely missed weathering that. So just something to pay attention to. Some more weathering on this, and then we get the finished look, looking quite dirty indeed there for that one, but kind of very interesting look. It's a bit kind of, I don't know, very sepia. It's a little bit too much sepia toned for my taste, but some nice effects on some of the weathered areas there on it. So there's some really nice work done on some of those bits here and there. Up next, the HG Zaku. This is the Zaku 2 F2 in this corner of the battlefield. So now we're getting into some diorama making, or at least vignette here with this one. So he's gone ahead and made the build, and once it's kind of formed, once you kind of build up, it looks like just with clay here for the ground on top of there, set the mobile suit into that so that you can have the mobile suit feet actually kind of imprinted into the rock or soil or whatever, so that it actually looks like it has some weight to it. And kind of set everything up, and then glue the kit so that the pose is fixed, and you won't have to kind of try to figure out again later how to reset the pose that you've already kind of arranged. So just using a little bit of super glue, it looks like with like the long thin needle, just shoot a little bit of super glue down into the joints where it's not really going to be seen, and then you can get to work on the base. So painting some black there at first, and then painting around the base. Another thing to keep in mind is that just after setting where the feet are going to be and making like the foot imprint, then once you're painting the diorama and painting the kit, if you paint them completely separately, then put it together as like the final step, you're gonna have like a diorama that's painted in one way, or a vignette in this case. The ground is painted in one way and the mobile suit's painted another way, and they're not gonna look like they completely are in the same place at the same time. They're not gonna be blended, so you do have to do some painting once the kit is actually together. So he's kind of setting everything up, painting the ground here, adding some foliage and all that. So just kind of the basics of just kind of diorama scene making here. Some chipping and weathering on the kit itself. And then once the kit is set onto the base, then going in and doing some more weathering now kind of together, so that you're tying the two pieces, the two elements here together. The mobile suit, the subject, and the background are tied together with some of the same weathering effects, so the mobile suit doesn't look out of place there on the vignette. So looks really cool. I love the Zaku on that. It looks quite nice. You guys know the Zaku F2 is my favorite Zaku design, so that's really cool to see. All right, the HG GOG is up next, a suit that I've never really liked, but in recent years it's definitely grown on me quite a bit. This looks like a really cool custom build here. So we got some more modification going on with this, and I'm guessing this is all just kind of to improve on the articulation a bit and maybe on the range of movement here of it. So I'm just gonna kind of speed along a little bit through this, as this is mostly just physical modifications, removing seam lines on here, and yeah, cutting some of the parts here and there, sharpening the claws on it, cutting out a spot there for adding a clear part for the mono eye, whereas I think otherwise it's just flat. So just mark out where it's going to be, mark it with a knife, drill it out larger, file it out. So that's what actually with sandpaper, sand it out so you have a nice clean round edge, add your clear part in there, and whammy. Then you can paint, mask, paint some of those parts there. Kind of interesting color scheme here for this one as well, very different. Add some markings, add some weathering, which is not really covered, but we've already covered. It's just kind of this little bit at the end here. Now just do weathering like we've done in past builds, and you get your finished result here. The GOG looking quite cool there in this very interesting color scheme. Very unique there for that. Looks cool. And we got a couple of builds here left, maybe more than a couple. So that's why I'm trying to speed it along here now. Towards the end, we got the Zaku 1. This is the 1/44 scale old kit, so going to be a lot more gluing required here on this. We did recently take a look at another Mook, which was completely devoted to how to model kits like this. So yeah, I won't spend too much time on this one, but go back and check out that video if you guys missed it. He added back this little bridge there at the snoot, so it looks like in order to better or more easily remove that seam line on there, which I think was maybe not necessarily really necessary, but just to, I guess, kind of make it a bit easier. Removing the seam line, because on these old kits, the seam line's right down the middle of the head, so it makes it difficult. So you should cut out that little bridge part, filed and sanded that all down, cleaned that up on the inside, and then added that back in. So then you had to glue that back onto there, and then need to sand that back down again. But that works, so that's interesting. Using some thinned down putty over here to add some texture onto the shoulder. So you just add a little bit of thinner, and you don't necessarily, depending on what kind of texture you're going for, you don't necessarily really even need to thin it down that much. You could just thin it down a little bit and just kind of brush it on there, stipple it on, and you can create some texture before you go in and add your paint. So then after priming, so it looks like maybe we're not gonna get into airbrushing with this, and kind of doesn't look like it, so okay. Doing priming in black, and then this kind of tan color over the top of that, hand painting some of the black detail on here, weathering, it's kind of all similar effects like we've seen done so far, then adding some chipping here with a toothpick rather than a sponge or a brush. You can use a toothpick for just adding some simple, especially for like an old kit like this. This is modeled, it's interesting that this is an old kit and modeled in a very kind of old style. So it works, I mean, it's very well done in that sense, but it looks really cool there. Pretty basic, simple Zaku there with some nice modeling done on that, some nice weathering, and that's it. We got the Shinanju plus Shinanju Stein narrative version, Shinanju Shmook, huh? Shinanju Shmook is what he's calling this, okay. So basically it's kind of a crossover build, a mixture build. So now we're getting into kit bashing. Basically, that's the theme of our next step here is kit bashing. And so we're going to be combining parts from the two different kits, and it looks like also, again, not fully painting it. So basically getting our multi different colors here by just mixing the parts from the kits and then Like for example, having the head in the head of the Shinanju Stein, so being like that light gray, white kind of color, but then using the horn piece from the Shinanju, so having a red horn on that. And so mixing parts from the two kits will give you the effect of having a kit which looks like this, or like this here. And then we got a bit about after applying top coat, and then it looks, I was gonna say reverse wash, but it looks like maybe not. There is going to be some reverse wash done over here, but not for the chest part, interestingly enough. So for the chest, using the sticker, and again, using a toothpick to work the sticker, especially a sticker that's like very detailed, like this for the front crest of the chest of the Shinanju. So you can do that, and it can look pretty good if you work the sticker in there well enough and don't mess it up at all. So you can do that. Another option, which is the better option, is just to spray gold or yellow, whatever you're going to use, and then in lacquer, and then spray either acrylic or enamel over the top of that black. In this case, he's actually just hand painting in the black, which works well enough as well. Then use your Q-tip to clean that up, and that's how you can do reverse wash there for those parts. Painting some like silver on some of these thruster details and everything, and then you have your half Shinanju, half Stein, Shinanju Shmook here, I guess is the name of this. Really cool effect. I mean, I think that looks really great, having it be like partially Shinanju, partially Shinanju Stein. It's a very interesting design there for that one. Looks really cool. Being a big Shinanju fan myself, I think that that looks really, really cool. All right, so we've got the HG Gunpla TR5 Hiraru Use TR5 Tyrant Fiver. So based off of the Hiraru, this is going to be some more kit bashing here. Kit bashing with some more HG kind of build fighters, build divers, option parts here to make some sort of kind of Advance of Zeta style kit bash between a lot of different stuff. So a lot of this is just going to be like just modifying different parts to kind of fit together in order to make this into something that looks like it's out of Advance of Zeta without being a canon Advance of Zeta design. Cutting and modifying all these parts that don't go together in order to go together to look pretty interesting. So like here's the, looks like, I think that's the Gunpla head, but to put a Gundam face in it, so you just modified that part and cut that out and took the face parts from a different Gundam, I think that's from a Unicorn kit actually, and put that in there for the face, cutting and adding some more parts for like an additional V-fin detail added onto there, a second like set of fins there on the head. All really quite interesting. I just want to kind of skip ahead here to see how the finished result looks. There's a bit too much kind of detail in some of these areas. It's a bit too detailed for what you would typically see on like an Advance of Zeta design, but it's still quite interesting, the combination of some of these parts. So just kind of essentially with this build, it's just kind of kit bashing, more kit bashing parts. Whereas with the Shinanju build, it was pretty much just like plug and play, you know, because they're based off of the same kit, basically. The Shinanju Stein's based off of the Shinanju kit. You can just very easily mix and match those parts. This one's just a bit more a bit more complex kit bashing where you're having to actually cut and modify parts in order to get everything to go together. We got Mobile Doll Sarah here. I think I said Mobile Doll May earlier, didn't I? I should have said Mobile Doll Sarah. But with this one, it's going to be dealing a little bit with like how to do some of these modeling techniques for particularly like character model kits like this. So we got a bit about like how to paint some of these details for the face, the eyes, using these Weathering Master sets there for brushing on some like a blush sort of on the cheeks. It's like a pigment set there specifically for skin tones. Painting some like pearl white here onto the white parts to give them this nice pearl effect. And then using some, again, like non-Gundam parts, which would be like this kind of ribbon details. So I'm not sure exactly what that's from, but using these kind of decorative ribbons here to add into kind of the dress part, kind of super gluing them in on there like that to make this effect. Some other different ribbon parts and little like gem and jewel parts. So just go to like a hobby supply store kind of essentially and find some different parts that you can just all glue onto your mobile doll kit and you can make it look like this. A lot of this would actually work quite well with Bandai's new 30-Minute Sisters Idol series kits that are coming out, the Idol Masters kits. If you wanted to create something like this, it's definitely something that would work well for those kits. All right, and then I think this is our last one here yet, which is the Unicorn, which is from the cover. So in this one, because we're making it look like line art sort of, or like illustration, the painting is going to be done in a little bit different way. And this is what I guess he was using for reference, was the like pull-out poster from a Hobby Japan magazine. There, a Katoki illustration of the unicorn And so he's got like some custom colors there, mixing it up to get that kind of purple shading that you typically see in a lot of Kotoki art. So using some purple for like a shadow color, kind of base shadow color there on this. And so once all the colors are all blocked out, then going in and adding some of this like shine detail in on some of like the psycho frame parts. So that's just all hand painted. What it's painted to look like it's like a reflection on those parts there. So that's all painted in there next. And then going over with a marker tip around all of the edges to make it look like all the lines around all the edges are drawn in like an illustration on the face there as well. And then we've got our finished result. So yeah, I've never tried that. I've never really wanted to try it necessarily, but it's certainly a very interesting technique. Let me know, have you guys ever tried this sort of painting style before? And was it successful? I don't know, it seems simple enough in theory, but probably difficult to do well, I would imagine. But this one looks really cool. And that's it. At the end here, we got some credits, and this has already been a very lengthy video, so I'm just gonna wrap it up. But hopefully you guys saw some interesting stuff in there. I did. Like I mentioned before, I always love taking a look at these books because even though a lot of this is very beginner orientated, but even if you're not a beginner, there's always still little tips and tricks that you can pick up from books like this. So that's why I love taking a look through them. Let me know if you guys saw anything interesting in the comment section. If you guys want to check out some Gunpla tools, paints, supplies, everything else that you might need, particularly for the contest, check the link in the video description to USA Gundam Store, and you can find all of that good stuff there. If you guys didn't miss the announcement for the new contest, check that out as we got that going on now, Universal Century versus Alternate Universe. And hopefully some of the stuff that you guys saw in here you might find particularly helpful for that contest. But until next time, thank you guys so much for checking out this video here today, leaving a like, subscribing if you're not yet subscribed. I really appreciate it, guys. I got a lot more videos like this and others on the way. So until next time, I hope you guys all have a good one. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.